morning, everyone. I'm your host, Lindsey Hollin. This is Farm and Ranch Friday, where we share tips and tricks. And yes, you will see my pup every now and then hanging out in the background. That is my best girl, as you know. Some of you that know me personally, that's my hunting dog, Rue. Very excited. We have a hot topic because it's really hot in Texas. And in the state, we are hitting triple digits. I don't know how warm it is in your area, but it's getting a little rough out there. I'm very excited today to share some amazing new, and to some of us, it may not be new, but there's a lot of changes that are going on with 1031 exchanges. And some people have heard of those, not a foreign concept at all. And then other people are like, what does that mean? How does that affect me as a real estate agent? How does that affect my clients? So very excited today to introduce Greg. He is an amazing attorney. I was reading up on you and I found out you're like one of the few, is it double licensed attorneys? Is that correct?
Double board certified. I'm certified in commercial and residential real estate law. Yeah.
I mean, impressive. I just let you guys know, we have some links in the chat as well as some more information about Greg. So I can't wait to just throw him to the wolves to y'all. Please feel free to put any of your questions in the comments. If you're watching this broadcast, we can see your live comments and questions, and we will take the time to answer those. So, Greg, do you want to talk about how you got into this whole mess of 1031 exchanges?
Exactly. Well, now, first of all, my connection to the farming and ranching community. All of my grandparents were farmers and ranchers in Old Glory, Texas. That was a German community in the 1800s. And then when World War I hit, they said, well, the name of our town is Brandenburg. We're Americans now. So they changed their name all the way from Brandenburg to Old Glory. It's between Abilene and Lubbock. And I basically grew up there. I spent all my summers there. I grew up in Fort Worth, but all of my grandparents were out there. And I had the blessing of, on one side, I had 37 cousins and we were very close. I also had the blessing of, on my mom's side, she was an only child. So that brings all kinds of blessings with it. One of which, she was young when we were born. So my grandparents were like in the early 40s. So they saw my brother and I as their little boys. So I grew up going out there all the time. And what's so funny is, to this day, I love the smell of cow manure. Now, now I know this classic line, maybe all of y'all have heard this. When I say that, people say, oh yeah, that's the smell of money. But for me, it's the smell of getting up before the sun came up with my grandfather. He lived to be 100 years old, and we would drive 60 miles into Abilene for the cattle auction. So I could barely talk about that without crying. So that's my emotional connection to the farming and ranch community. And then jump all the way to now. Well, I got an accounting degree and a law degree from UT a long, long time ago. And I practiced law, and then I got in the title business. And then some realtors said, this is way back in like 90, over 30 years ago, some realtors in Arlington, Texas said, hey, Greg, why don't y'all do 1031s? Y'all got the best closers, but y'all don't do 1031s. And we have investors that sell investment real estate without paying taxes. And when we have those, we have to take them to this lawyer who has horrible bedside manner. We do not like him at all. But he says he knows about 1031s. Now I know he probably didn't, because how much of a niche it is. Anyway, and so there were two blessings that came from that conversation, Lindsey, two of them. One of them, well, first of all, I said, why don't I know about this? I've got an accounting and law degree. Anyway, it's because it's a niche. But the two blessings were, A, it told me they were real people do them. And two, it told me to keep my eyes open. So what happened in 93, I was in Houston, Texas, and it was presidents of Stewart Title Companies all over the nation. And, you know, it's like a 3-day conference. You cover like 40 things, you know, every 30 minutes. And one of the topics they brought up, they go, oh, by the way, we bought one of the two biggest 1031 companies in the country. And I'm the only one of the 250 presidents that were there that hit the ceiling with excitement. I said, oh my gosh, my prayers have been answered. And within a year, I was able to transition from running title offices. I had 85 employees to doing 1031. So I've done nothing but 1031 since 94. And what we do is our core business is we do all of the work that people need for 1031s. So actually, you as a realtor, all you need to know is what this does for people and who to call. But then the other thing we do that's unofficial is what I'm doing right now. We train people on how to use them in their business. We train property owners and also real estate agents about how to use them in their business. And so that's how I got in the business.
That's amazing. What a story from a ranch out northwest to where you are now, helping and serving farm and ranch agents and their clients. I will tell you, one of the themes that I have here, and the reason why we do this podcast, is education. And I tell my agents and brokers that I'm friends with, we are the source of the sources. And we're not licensed. We're not licensed. We're not experts in this field. You are. And this field changes all the time. I remember when I started and what 1031s could do. And now with some of the off-camera conversations you and I have, I'm just blown away. And it's real easy, I think, to say, oh, well, 1031 exchanges only do this. And it's like, no, you actually have more tools in your toolbox, as an attorney who does this niche type of accounting and law. It blows my mind. So I'm very excited to share some of that. For those listening, you will not believe the tools that they have out there. Because, in the beginning, what I knew is, oh, if you were selling something, there's a possibility you could buy something exactly like it and 1031 only that money into something exactly like it. Now that I hear that, oh, your clients can actually buy the land and build with that money, not buy any land and put it in different types of funnels, so to speak. I'll just say that because you're gonna introduce that here shortly. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So I'm very excited that you are here. This is far overdue in our industry. So I am going to let you kind of take it away. Remember, folks, please feel free to drop questions. We will get to those as well. And I'm going to help you get started by pulling this up right here. There you go. Why 1031 matters to owners and why 1031 matters to farm and ranch real estate agents. I'm going to throw that.
There we go. Yeah, exactly.
We are farm and ranch centric. No offense to realtors.
Okay, I got you. Yeah.
No offense to realtors. However, I just want to let you know that our audience sells dirt. Ranch.
Right. Yeah. There may not be officially a realtor. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, let me cover the big picture. You won't believe what a simple concept this is. Now, yeah, we've come up with like 180 issues that can arise, but that's what we handle. But the basic concept, people think that, a lot of people think it's scary or it's mysterious or it's hard. It's none of those. And this is about the simplest concept you've ever heard of. And speaking of farmers and ranchers are the ones who got this in the code in 1921, 102 years ago. This is how powerful and simple this concept is. Farmers figured out way back then. See, we didn't start collecting income taxes until the 19-teens. And so then after that, we started taxing when people sell something for more than they paid for it. Well, farmers started looking around after a few years, and they had owned a farm or ranch for a while, and it had gone up in value, and they were ready to sell it and buy a bigger one to generate more income that would benefit their family. And what they quickly figured out is, hey, if I'm selling dirt and I'm buying dirt, if I use all my money to buy more dirt that costs more, how the heck am I going to pay taxes? And the government, it didn't take hardly any wisdom at all for the government to figure out that people can't pay taxes with dirt. And if we're going to tax people on their dirt, they're not going to sell and buy anyway. And so the government doesn't get any revenue. And we love it. The government, we being the government, let's say this is Uncle Sam talking, we love it when people sell and buy real estate because it creates jobs, and then we tax those jobs. And real estate agents make money, and we tax them. And we tax the title companies, we tax the seed companies. So the government has so many things in the tax code that are designed to generate even more revenue. And that's how basic this is. In fact, you want to get on Amazon, you want to order a book called by Tom Wheelwright, Wheelwright. I don't want to try to type while I'm talking. Tom Wheelwright, Tax-Free Wealth. And it's the easiest book I've ever seen about the tax code. This applies to everything, not just 1031s. He explains how, do you know that less than 1% of the tax code actually talks about paying taxes? Over 99% of it talks about not paying taxes. And this is just an example. So that is the basic concept that if I click, let me find technical issue. If I hit this, there we go. Oh, Lindsey already gave you my background, that this is all I've done for almost 29 years. Here's the big picture. This is section 1031. It says no gain or loss shall be recognized. The word recognized means tax. So if you're selling something for more than you paid for it, and you don't yet know if it's taxed, that's called you're realizing a gain. So you want to realize gains and not have to recognize them. So this code section, it's real simple. It says no matter how big your gain is, you don't have to pay taxes if you do what they call an exchange of what they call like-kind property. If you're taking notes, it's always great, even in the high-tech world, always take just a few notes. That helps, burn it in your brain. Everybody, says that. If you have a pen and paper, you just want to write down 3 words. This all boils down to 3 words. And you just need to have a broad idea of it. And then, of course, like Lindsey said, you just call somebody like me when it comes up anyway, although you can proactively bring this up to get more listings. I'll talk about that later. Just write down, if you will, like-kind, and then the word exchange, and then qualified intermediary. You just need to know 3 words, like-kind and exchange and qualified intermediary. None of those words mean what they say. The first 2 words are a lot better than they sound. The last word is a lot worse than it sounds. So you want to learn what the first 2 words means. Like Lindsey said, it opens up so much opportunity that very few people to this day, appreciate. And but you want to learn the 3rd word so that you protect yourself and your client. If you need to learn what that word means to keep from losing everything you're about to gain. So that's the big picture. Uncle Sam encourages selling and buying of real estate. I'm so used to clicking the other arrow that I've got to get used to this. Why does this matter to owners? Tax deferral. It's almost always better if you are going to pay taxes to pay later. It's almost always, not always. If you're only going to defer for 1 or 2 years and you think the tax rate's going to be higher at that point, don't defer, whether it's a 1031 or something else. Most 1031 people are long-term people. And if they ever pay tax, it's going to be at no interest rate and at cheaper dollars. The longer you do it, the cheaper are the dollars. And that's only if you pay taxes. You never pay tax unless you choose to. And you choose to by getting out of real estate. Well, what some people may think of as having to stay in real estate is a lot more restrictive than it is. Again, what Lindsey alluded to, I'm going to get into all the options. I know EXP agents love mailbox money. Well, 1031s are perfect for mailbox money for your client and then for you too, because you build up revenue, or if you're selling personally. So that's what Lindsey's talking about. What some of the newest things 31s are people learning how mailbox money they can go. So tax deferral, you defer at no interest as long as you are willing to stay in real estate. You leverage. So every dollar you defer, let's say you're putting 25% down into more property. So every dollar that you're not paying in taxes, you multiply that by 4, and that's how much it increases your client's buying power. So that's leveraging your tax dollars. Diversification. After I finish going through like-kind, you're going to see how diversified you can go. Consolidation, you can simplify. If you have a lot of single-family rentals, again, I know we're talking about farms and ranches, but some of y'all are in residential. You're thinking about transitioning into farm and ranch, and you just want to know this anyway, that it's great for farms and ranches and a whole bunch of other things. Well, some people may want to sell a bunch of residential rental properties to buy a farm or ranch. They can do that. We'll see in a minute. Cash flow. A lot of people get tired of being land rich and cash poor. that big CPA firm, Deloitte, says every year about 35% of raw land sales are 1031s. About half the time, people sell land to buy more land. The other half, when they learn that they can buy mailbox money, they buy mailbox money. So you can sell land that's worth a lot more than you paid for it, but it's not sending your kids to college or law school, or paying any other bills. And with a 1031, you can sell land, and you can buy land with income producing buildings on it, or other things we're going to talk about with mailbox money, and not pay taxes. Management relief. Again, we keep bringing up mailbox money. It may not be going from land to cash flow. It can also be from high maintenance real estate to cash flow. Again, maybe the farm and ranch, maybe you can't work it anymore. It's too much trouble. Or rentals. Again, you can sell high maintenance real estate and buy real estate that still qualifies, and but it doesn't take as much management. And then estate planning, you can do what we call swap till you drop. Not only do you not pay taxes as long as you're doing 1031s, but when you die, the tax does go away. We always have to keep up with governmental activities because they try to take away 1031 sometimes, and they try to take away step up in basis, but we keep preventing that. So it's still the case that whether you bought your property with 1031s or not, when you die and leave your property to your heirs, they get a new basis. So the capital gains tax goes away on death. So you just have to find out with a good estate planning attorney whether you have estate tax issues. But as long as you don't have estate tax issues, then you actually want the property to be in your state. Now, in some states, probate is a huge mess. It's not in Texas and a bunch of states. So sometimes people knee jerk getting the property out of their name when they're older, and they put it in their kids' names. You want to really think about it, and talk to an estate planner, but also talk to somebody like myself, because usually we're the ones that remind people about the step up in basis, especially if you've done a lot of 1031s, you've deferred a lot of gain, and you really want to be careful before you just deed the property out of an older person's name into the younger person. When that happens, if the property is gifted before death, the person that receives the property takes on their parents or grandparents or whoever it is low basis, meaning they take on their high gain. After you get a deed while the person's living, after you get that, if you ever sell it, you're going to pay tax on your gain and their gain. So this can be great estate planning to do.
That's like just those two slides. My mind is just like blown. I don't know about the rest of you out there. I'm seeing a bunch of wows in the comments. I think some of the high points that I like to tell agents is, listen, this is not just, this is not just you saving your clients money, but you're also actually making them more money off of that buying and selling for future gain. And then I will tell you, if you save your clients money or make them more money, you are going to be the go-to referral agent for anything anybody's selling. They're going to be like, not only did my agent help me sell my ranch, but I saved on my taxes. I mean, you will be in their debt forever, I promise you. And I've actually had some horror stories where I had clients that were connected with the wrong 1031 exchange attorneys, and they ended up not doing it. And they found out they actually could have in a different way, because just like real estate agents and brokers and farm and ranch agents, we're not all created equal. We sometimes, some of us have a higher level of experience than others. So I'm very excited to introduce y'all to Greg and just this amazing understanding to introduce your clients to this opportunity when they're buying and selling a ranch, and get them with the right source on walking through their options. Because like I said, for me, I literally have always been, told and ingrained in my brain that they have to buy something exactly like they're selling. And this is not the case anymore. And two, also, I'm buying in Texas, I'm selling in Texas, I have to buy in Texas. That's not the case either, is it, Greg?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a farm and ranch broker who's knowledgeable about 1031s, and his buyer was looking at a ranch, and the agent that was selling that other farmer, that other ranch, um, said to him, and that agent has been in the business quite a while, being a farm and ranch broker, and that agent said, um, I think this is like kind because this ranch has horse stables on it. And so it would be like kind to another ranch with horse stables. Nothing could be more limited, more narrower than what it is. As we're going to get into, and as Lindsey's aware of, you can sell a ranch and buy rent houses or vice versa. We're really going to get into the neat mailbox money options. So yeah, that's the kind of information you run into. And so y'all want to be knowledgeable about it. There is a slide talking about what Lindsey was saying. I do have a slide also on why 1031s matter to real estate agents. The PowerPoint I grabbed was one I did yesterday for owners, but I can send it to y'all. But yeah, here's what's neat about it is first on the list of why these are important to real estate agents is it matches up with your number one duty, which is to look out for your client's best interest. I know the NAR Code of Ethics, Article 1, of course, says that right off the top. In every state real estate law, property, whatever law, real estate law for real estate agents, ethics provisions says that. And then also, so it's very fulfilling. You're taking care of your client. And while you're doing that, you're also avoiding having a mad client, finding out later that if your client finds out later they could have done a 1031 and you didn't bring it up. Another one. Many sellers only sell because of this option. There are so many sales I've seen where the person wasn't going to sell their property because they thought that there was no option, then they would have to pay taxes, and by gosh, we're not going to pay taxes. So you get a lot of properties sell only because of this. You get more listings. If it was going to list anyway, but you're competing against other agents, odds are you're the only one that's going to bring this up as a possibility. I talked to a property owner that said the first property he sold, he was talking to several agents. Only one agent brought up the 1031 option. And so he went with that agent. He didn't even do a 1031 because it didn't fit. But since that agent had some knowledge that the other ones didn't, he has since done 8 transactions with that one agent. So it just goes on and on. You get more listings, more sales, more referrals for life. So
right. You're a hero. Knowledge is power, especially in this industry. I'm just blown away. A few things that you said that I wanted to pick up on is you joked about people not wanting to pay taxes. We all know our ranchers and our farmers, when it comes down to the end of the year, they would rather go buy a brand new pickup truck or tractor than pay Uncle Sam. I'm sorry to say, being honest here, we all know. We all know those guys. So it's so funny that you say that. And man, we have so many comments here in the chat. No questions, but the aha moments of not knowing, that the heirs would have to pay on gains prior to the deed. Hey, Chris, good to see you out there. Wow, prior to if deeded before the parent dies. Just little nuggets of knowledge like that. It being able to tell your clients, that may not be the case. I have someone to introduce you to that maybe can give you some additional options you might need to see. I mean, it's just an introduction. So I'm really excited that we have you. We have another one. It's like tax-free wealth ? Like, how crazy is that? Hey, Todd. It's so nice to see everybody on here. Another thing you brought up that I thought was insane is that farmers and ranchers were the ones to introduce this in 1921.
Exactly.
I mean, talk about some history there.
Right. Yeah, it's cool. Very cool.
Yeah. I do have a question for you. Okay. Do you only work in Texas?
Absolutely not. Oh, no. Just like you said about selling in one state and buying in another, we barely even pay attention to what state it's in. All over the country, I have people that sell in California and buy in Texas, and it could go the other way, but it's usually, as we know, selling in California and buying in Texas. But it can be, Texas doesn't have to be involved in all. I do this all over the country. I just happen to live mainly in Austin. Also, I have a second home in Dallas, Fort Worth, but I do this all over the country. Even before COVID, even my entire 29 years, I have met less than 1% of my clients. I've met less than 1% of my clients. Yeah, it's not something you don't hire somebody because they're down the street. And it's federal law. See, it's federal law. So it applies the same way all over the country. And it's all like kind, not just by states, but look at this slide. You can just show people this slide. All of this is like kind. It's just, one guy said like kind means if you like that kind, buy it.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. You know, that's the other thing. It's kind of funny. I had a few more comments. I was just about to ask about other states. Can you kind of explain why it's, you know, nationwide, or, you know, is it even a worldwide?
No, it's not worldwide. Okay. Now the sellers and the buyers, they don't have to be U.S. citizens, but it's the properties. You qualify the property, not the person. So you do have to be selling and buying in the U.S. There are international exchanges, but you have to do the whole thing international. So you can't sell in the U.S. and buy in another country or vice versa. But if you represent anybody that's a foreign national and they're selling and buying in the U.S., they can do it. So the reason it doesn't matter is because we're talking about the U.S. tax code. And what's unbelievable is even the states that do have state income tax, they literally permit you to sell in that state and purchase in a state that doesn't have taxes, and it's not their taxes. But you have to report every year. If you ever sell without doing another 1031, then you have to pay that state too. Other than that, we're talking about federal taxes. So that's why you do it all over the nation. Doesn't matter what state you're in.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Like I said, I feel like some of us have that just original process ingrained in our brain. We had no idea how it's expanded and, you know, and grown since then. So, you know, thank you for that. So what would you want to tell real estate professionals that sell farm and ranches to, what would you want them to know, or at least advise their clients, you know, as far as getting in touch with a 1031 exchange expert?
Yeah, I'm sure that the agents on here that are, you know, they're high level, that means they're not transactional. So, you know, they're relationship oriented. You want to get to know why someone is selling and what their goals are, what they're going to do with the funds, because do they want to pay taxes? Do they want to have less money after they sell it? Or do they want to have as much money? You know, have they thought about a 1031? So I would say with every potential listing of a farm or ranch, ask them, you know, people can have their own ways of bringing it up, but say, are you going to do a 1031? Knowing they may not know what that is, but that's fine. Then if they say, oh, what's that? Say, well, I'm not the 1031 expert. I'm not allowed to answer a lot of questions about it, but we have sellers all the time that sell, and without paying taxes, they do a 1031. You know, they do have to buy other property, but you know, if you're interested at all in just getting information, it doesn't cost you anything to call this person I know or whoever you know. I have a lot of farm and ranch brokers that have done tons of 1031s, and they all tell me, I've done a lot of these, and all I ever tell people is, hey, you might want to call Greg. So that's how simple this is. You know, after listening to this, you know what this is, but then, you know, you don't try to explain it to people, but you know enough to say, hey, you might want to call this guy. He might be able to tell you what your options are on selling this and not paying taxes. Something real simple.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, Devon here, she actually just put in the chat that she does have a client she'd like you to consult with. That's actually selling 5 rental properties in Texas. For those of y'all in the chat, as always, all the information as well as additional slides and Greg's contact information is in the description for these podcasts. So please feel free when you open up the link to look and open up that description, and you'll get that information. And we provided that for you because I know sometimes everyone's like, how do I get a hold of him? This was amazing. And also, too, if y'all ever want to reach out to me directly, my phone number is easy to remember, 1-833-TX-RANCH. So make sure you hit in those letters for those numbers. And, but yes, do not forget about the description below these podcasts so you can get a hold of him and ask more. And maybe a little side secret, Greg may be teaching a part of our farm and ranch class seminar that we might be putting on here shortly. So let me just throw that out there. Oh my gosh, Debbie's like, you're on my speed dial, Lindsey. I know, Debbie. Thank you. There's a few people on this chat that have my cell phone. So that's
Great.
hilarious. Awesome. So what I wanted to ask you about, and we talked offline, was you don't have to buy property. You can actually roll the funds into another opportunity.
Well, when I say opportunity, it has to qualify as real property, but more things qualify as real property under 1031 than you may think of. So all you have to do, you just have to be selling an interest in real property anywhere in the nation that you were holding for use in your business or for investment. If the answer to that is yes, guess what you get to buy? Anything in the nation that's an interest in real property that you're going to hold for use in your business or for investment. So that means residential rentals are like kind of multifamilies to commercial to farms and ranches. So people can sell property in the city and buy property in the country, or brick and mortar for land and vice versa. And well, this grassy hill over here is for a conservation easement. I had someone around Dripping Springs, they had 120 acres. And it was by I think Edwards Aquifer, and the government literally paid them $4.7 million, and they didn't even have to give up their land. They had to put a conservation easement. The government didn't want them to develop some of their land. So the owners, they weren't going to develop that anyway. And they get to build 7 more homes on a few acres of this property. And since they put an easement on it, on the rest of it, that means it can never be developed. And that was worth $4.7 million. And so they put half of it into oil and gas royalties and the other half into a $2 million rental in northern New Mexico. And so they were just having this land that wasn't paying them anything. They're making $300,000 a year off their oil and gas royalties, and then whatever they're earning off of their rental. And they can even go to that rental for 2 weeks a year for 2 years. And then after that, they can go there as much as they want. That's how broad your options are. So that's a conservation easement. If you get paid money for an easement, you can buy anything else that qualifies. And again, so oil and gas royalties qualify. And then a fractional interest in like an Amazon warehouse. I own one in Tucson, Arizona. Those qualify. The MAILBOX money is either you buy a triple net lease property. That's where you lease a property like to a Walgreens, net of maintenance and taxes and insurance. So every Walgreens and CVS that we drive by that are standalone, and Dollar General stores and all kinds of places like that, those are typically owned by an older 1031 investor who's never been there. So you could sell a farm and ranch and buy a Walgreens and not do anything. Or like I said, you can buy a fractional interest in a building or oil and gas royalties. That's really the 3 forms of MAILBOX money. So that kind of answers the hint that Lindsey and I have been given at the top of the show about
trying to wrap my head around it. I'm like, okay, I went from this very simple understanding of 1031 exchange to wow, the opportunity to talk about not just MAILBOX money, but like just triple and quadruple your income, your client's portfolio. I mean, just, we have comments about that gets a wow and thinking outside the box. But I mean, what an amazing, really gift you can offer your clients in this knowledge and this process. So how would you tell agents, if they're going to introduce their clients to you, how do you like to have us as farm and ranch agents kind of prep the client for the introduction?
All kinds of ways. I have brochures. I have a brochure I can send people, or maybe that list of why they matter to owners gets their attention. That's just something I developed in the last month, and I've done this 29 years. So, like I said, a lot of brokers have just said, "Well, what are you going to do with the money? Do you want to give a bunch of it to Uncle Sam, or have you thought about, you got to reinvest it anyway? What are you thinking about reinvesting in? If you do a 1031." You can defer the taxes. And I'm not the one that tells you for sure if you can do it or not. I'm just saying maybe you can. And if I were you, I would call a good 1031 person. And if you don't know one, here's somebody you can call and just check them out for yourself. Do your due diligence and just give him a call. He doesn't charge us for calls. We charge just like you do, just like real estate agents and title companies. We don't charge anything for questions, and we only get paid if they use us at the closing. So just tell them, hey, there's no commitment or charge to call this guy that's done 1031s for almost 30 years. And to get to the charge, we only charge, even if they do use us, we only charge $1,250 on the sale and nothing on up to 3 purchases, because we don't do so many of these and we earn some of the interest. We're in it for the interest. So it's a win-win. People only it only costs people $1,250, but yeah, we make $1,250 plus interest. So it's just great for everybody. Yeah.
That's amazing. And, just thinking outside the box in general, what a way to work with other farm and ranch brokers to say, listen, if you're writing a contract, it's very important to know and disclose if you're doing a 1031 exchange. So actually asking the seller's agent, if you're representing the buyer, hey, are you doing a 1031 exchange? No. I just want to let you know that I met this really amazing guy who is very knowledgeable about all the new opportunities. Let me send you his number. And you know what better way to connect and really work together. And like I said, sometimes everyone you meet, even a real estate agent, can give you another referral for business. So I always think like, let's help everyone out. So what a cool way, not just, from the seller's agent side, but also from the buyer's agent side, letting them know, opening that door and asking that question, and getting our buddy over here some more business, and really being the superhero in the transaction.
Yeah. And I can skip some.
You can pay me later.
Yeah. Yeah, you bet. Yeah. I've talked a little bit about vacation homes. You can buy a vacation home. There's special rules for that. And I'll wait to get into the weeds when somebody calls me. I have an article on it. But in the interest of time, the fractional ownership, let's call it a DST, but that's just an interest in an Amazon warehouse. Your people can buy a DST and not do anything. There's pros and cons with them that I'll go into when you call me. I'd be happy to do it now, but I think in the interest of time, I want to kind of cover.
We may have you back for a more advanced class.
Yeah. Now, even though the categories of what qualifies are very broad, this is not for flips, y'all. This is they still have to buy it to hold. So the number one question we get is, well, how long do I have to hold it before I can do another 1031? Well, it's actually a matter of intent. I mean, there are rules of thumb. You should hold a property at least a year, and it's even more conservative to hold it at least 2 years to prove you bought it to hold as opposed to flip. But all the facts and circumstances are relevant. So, the past 3 years when things were so crazy, we had a lot of people that bought to hold, and 3 or 4 months later, they received an unsolicited offer that was way more than they paid for it. They can do a 1031. So that's the word held. We needed to cover, a little bit about the word held, and that's the word held. And then as far as the exchange equation that's like kind. And for exchange, there's 2 parts to exchange. One is the money part, and then the other one is the structure that's gonna reinforce why I said exchange doesn't even mean exchange. So just like kind doesn't mean like kind, and it's better than that. Exchange is better. But first, the money. If your client wants to defer all the taxes, they do have to buy something equal or greater in price, but they can take out closing costs. So if you're selling for $900,000 and you pay off a $300,000 loan and you have cost of sale of $60,000, you have equity of $540,000, you need to buy. Well, the minimum you need to buy here is $840,000. You get to take out closing costs. So if you sell for 900,000, take out closing costs of 60, that leaves 840. You got to buy for 840 or more and not put cash in your pocket. In this case, they moved way up. They bought for $1.2 million, and they replaced their equity. So as long as you reinvest your equity and replace your debt, you have no boot. And again, this is kind of going quickly because there's a lot to cover in this short period of time. But I wanted to briefly cover the dollars. It's important. You can do a partial exchange, but every amount you don't invest after you take out closing cost is taxable. Some people get mad that they can't put their costs back in their pocket, but they can't. Any money they put in their pocket or get out of debt on, that comes out of profit. So just for you to know the big picture, this is to defer all the taxes. The general concept here is moving up, but you can move just level and just pay closing costs. So here's where they move down. It's the same sale, but they move down. They put 100,000 in their pocket, and they borrowed 40,000 less on the replacement property. So they have $140,000 boot, but that's fine. What if their gain would have been 340,000? They're still going to defer tax on 200,000, which is a lot. The tax on 200,000 is at least 30,000 for most people, just the federal tax. Or if they don't have another property to buy, but they figure this out early enough, they can dump this into DST or oil and gas royalties. So the structure is your client is at the top. We call them a taxpayer, but that's your seller. So the way a 1031 works, you bring in someone like us before closing, and we just email some certain documents to the closing, and then your seller goes ahead and deeds to the buyer, and then the date of closing is day 0. And then after that, you've got 45 days to put together a list of properties they're considering, and you can only list up to 3 properties in number. Or if you want to list more than 3 properties, then the total value of them cannot be more than double their gross sales price. Oh, and you're allowed to tie up properties to buy ahead of time if you can get a contingent offer accepted or an option. I find farms and ranches of all the property types have been the most workable. The hardest to tie up ahead of time is if you have a really, really hot metro market for residential properties. It's hard to get the seller of a 1 to 4 family home to accept a contingent offer if it's a hot seller's market. But in my 29 years, I've seen it'd be a lot more common that someone's selling they want to buy a farm, and the person they want to buy from knows they want to buy it, but they need to sell theirs first, and they kind of work together. So whatever.
It's interesting to talk about this timeline because I feel like clients are very confused on, I've had sellers even said, I don't want to list it yet because I need to find something to replace it. And, letting them know and educating them, hey, we could tie up something before, or let's put it on the market and find a buyer and negotiate with that buyer to give you that time as well. So, I love that you have this timeline because I've also heard that in some cases this timeline can be adjusted. Have you heard about that?
That is said sometimes. I hear that off and on forever, and that's a real scary thought. It actually is.
I did hear of a court case where they actually got 6 months. I don't know what attorneys battle in those cases, but I think too, having your seller prior to listing, talking to you, because, sometimes I feel like, listen, it's great to think about, trying to play it safe and find something before you list. But, the best time to list is right now. We do not know what the market holds tomorrow. We could go back into, I think COVID kind of taught us that anything can happen and it can go south really fast. So if we are in a good market, which I feel like we're in a good market in Texas selling land right now, we're moving taken regardless of what's going on residential. But, understanding this timeline and not letting your clients get hung up on this, because it's actually happened to me in the past as well. So thank you for kind of explaining this, because there is a lot of confusion on these days.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And you can just call me on that because it generally takes literally a federally declared disaster like a tornado or a hurricane or a flood, to get an extension. So people want to, be very careful about meeting the deadline. So yeah, I can help them with that. This is a case, I think I already mentioned it, so I won't be late. It was in Leander. A farmer was 86 years old. He was still farming. A developer offered him over $6 million for his property. He paid, these are just rounded barely to make it simpler. After he took out closing costs, he had $6 million in cash. He put $3 million into a DST. Those only pay about 4 or 5%. He bought his about 3 years ago. They were paying more like 5. They're really like 3.5 and 4 now. But he's making $150,000 a year off that. He put $3 million into royalties, where he's making 15% at 450. He's getting $600,000 a year. He doesn't have to do anything. If he gets to where he totally can't work, doesn't affect his income at all. That's not even what he was the most excited about at all. He was not even as excited about that at all as the fact that he got to quit worrying about leaving one family farm to 5 kids and their kids. And he was able to just leave them cash flow. And each kid gets 20% of his interest in the Amazon warehouse and 20% of his interest in the royalties. They never even have to talk to each other, and they just get cash flow. They don't have to know anything about it, and they're just going to get money, all this money every month. It's just amazing what people can do, what this does for people.
Wow, talk about the nightmare situation. Selling land here in Texas, they're worried. Well, one, my kids don't want it. Just this solution alone blows my mind, because we have that more often than not. Like, grandpa's got the farm, dad's got the farm, kids live in Houston, kids live in Dallas. They don't want to buy it. And what a way, you sell it once and you have that money, but to put this type of program together and just, keep your legacy moving and supporting your family, like, once again, mind blown, everybody. Like, is everybody looking at this? Like, I'm sitting here going, I want to own an Amazon and say I own a little.
Yeah. It makes you not feel as bad every time you go to your front door and there's another Amazon package. Yeah. At least they're paying you. Yeah. It's great. We need to get to, here's a slide, how to walk the horse to the barn, with a 1031. Of course, first you want to bring this up. We've talked about that. And then if your client wants to do it, you contact what's called a QI. I'm going to finish up by covering that term real quick, but you want to contact a QI early in the sales process. And then if they want to do it, if your client wants to do it, it's mainly a communication thing. Your job is to make sure the title company knows it's a 1031, and then and make sure. So we, as the QI, here's what we need. We need 3 things: at least one conversation directly with your client. We need the contract, and we need the title commitment. And then if you can introduce the title company to the 1031 company and vice versa, that's the role you play, other than the monumental role you play by bringing this up in the first place. And then when you can, at least a week before closing, make sure the 1031 company, us, the QI, has what we need to do our documents. And then even after that, at least 24 hours before closing, make sure the title company has the exchange documents. I have situations where we have done our job, we have sent the exchange documents, and people show up at closing and the closer says, well, I don't have the exchange documents, because we all get like how many, 200, 300 emails a day. So, we've always sent them, but they don't always know they've got them. So you don't just show up at closing and expect it to be a 1031. You got to make sure everybody's working together, and make sure before you head to closing that the title company has the exchange documents. If your client closes and funds a deal without exchange documents, 5 seconds after that, it's too late to do a 1031. I get those calls every week. The deal is already closed, and it's too late to do a 1031 then.
So on both sides of the table, just as a broker of my, I own my own LLC as well as working with EXP. First, in Texas, you have to declare in the contract that the buyer or the seller, because the buyer could be coming in with a 1031 exchange, who has a 1031 exchange. Like, I normally write that in an exhibit. I prefer exhibits over special provisions. However, obviously, you're going to have an email of correspondence that this is going to be in a 1031 exchange. So you could put that in special provisions. I always highly recommend anything that's put in special provisions has been written by the client in an email to you as an agent. And then you have those clients initial that section of the provisions or the exhibit. Like I said, I prefer it. And if you guys have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer it. We do it quite a bit. And what a way to remind the due diligence, everyone. So obviously everyone's been notified in the contract, but when you escrow that contract, making sure your 1031 group and company is copied on that initial email, and those contracts and that escrow officer as well. So we've seen those horror stories too, where, somebody drops a ball. We're all human. It happens. But talk about a massive, massive dollar that could be lost, especially the slide you just showed us prior about that rancher and him, getting all, that equity and funding, based on those investments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then here's a split treatment. This reminds me, the one slide I didn't mention on that big slide that had all the types of properties. San Antonio buys a lot of water rights from ranchers, so that even qualifies. I forgot that. So we have ranchers that can sell some of the water under their ranch. They buy a whole nother ranch with that money without paying taxes. I just thought of it now that I'm mentioning this split treatment. Okay. A married couple gets a $500,000 gain.
Time out. I'm going to need you to tell me about that because I do have a client that may be interested in that. If you do have the contacts in San Antonio, that would make his day if I was able to say, hey, by the way, remember we were talking about all the water?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'm going to get with you on the side with that one.
Okay. You bet. Yeah. Well, and what if they live on the farm or ranch? How do you do that? Well, that's two different code sections. So if you're selling a farm or ranch and they live on it, they just need to allocate some of the sales price to their home. A single person gets $250,000 gain tax free for your home. A married couple gets $500,000. I love these. These are so cool. There's no really black and white rules on how to allocate the money. So it's a judgment call, but you can have someone sell a farm or ranch where they live on it and they get some of the money tax free for their home. Again, it's a judgment call. And then they do a 1031 with the rest. About half the people that do this, they'll use the money for their land to buy a lot more land, 100 miles out of town. The other half, again, puts it into MAILBOX money, and they convert all that cash for their land into just pure MAILBOX money and just take it easy. So that's called a split treatment. The code section for primary residence is 121. That's why it says split treatment, section 1031 and section 121. So you can combine a homestead, the federal government calls it primary residence, and a farm, whether it's producing or not, it could be just land, just mesquite trees, like we have a lot in West Texas, or actually crops. So the last word is qualified intermediary. So the way you do a 1031, as we said, it can be pretty easy. You have a QI answer all the questions and hold the money between the sale and the purchase. Well, that's all fine and good. So what's so bad about this word, and why is this part of your defensive game plan as opposed to your offensive game plan? Well, there's nothing qualified about the term qualified intermediary. That's why I said none of these words mean what they say. And the first two are better. This one's worse. The actual definition of a qualified intermediary is everyone in the universe who's not disqualified. Everybody in the universe who's not disqualified is a qualified intermediary. Do they disqualify people that are in prison for embezzling other people's money? No. Do they disqualify people who've never opened the tax code? No. They only disqualify the person's relatives, close relatives, or their agents. So it only means someone independent. That's all that a qualified intermediary means, someone independent. There is no federal regulation of this business, believe it or not. There is no license to do this. There's no rule that the money is even put in the bank or that it's not put in just the name of the 1031 company. So lots of people they call themselves a qualified intermediary, and they've stolen the money, or they've just not really stolen it, but they put it in a place that wasn't as safe, like stocks that go down, and then they can't produce your money, and your money is gone. Your money is gone. So you have to do due diligence on the qualified intermediary. Just because QIs are not regulated doesn't mean you can't hire a QI that is regulated. So all of the large national title companies own very good 1031 companies, but you can pick and choose. It's all independent. You can pick one title company to close your deal, and you can pick a 1031 company that's owned by a different company, title company, to handle your 1031. So yeah, there's a whole episode of American Greed that talks about this second one for 132 million. That guy got arrested in Miami in the airport, but the money was gone, so it didn't really help the people. So some of the people that have done this either got zero to money of their they got anywhere from zero to maybe pennies on the dollar of their money back, and it's gone. So and they used to charge you taxes because you didn't finish an exchange. They finally fixed that, but you don't want to lose your money. So that's what qualified intermediary is. People use us because we're owned by Stewart Title. We've never lost a penny. We've done over 200,000 of these. We put in writing the money only goes in an A-rated bank, and we get audited all the time internally and by outside auditors. The client's name is on the account. Like I said, there's not even a law that says the client's name is on the account. With us, each client has their own account with their name on it, and we can't wire the money without their authorization, and we're only going to send it to a title company. And so you need to know that about QIs. That's the less fun part, but it's just as important. So true or false, QIs are highly regulated. False, they're not regulated, but some of us are regulated because we choose to be. In summary, like kind is all U.S. real estate held for business or investment, and an exchange is a sale with exchange documents followed by an identification within 45 days and a purchase within 180. The 45 is part of the 180. And then a QI under the tax code is any old third party who holds the funds. But who it is to a prudent investor is somebody that knows what the heck they're doing. And I gave this class yesterday in Dallas, so that's my Dallas-Fort Worth number. Doesn't matter. I have a lot of phone numbers, but they all go to the same phone, and that's my email address.
So if y'all are watching, do a screenshot from your phone or take a picture of that right now. Thank you. And I actually have another question. Nick,
Sure.
there are no stupid questions here.
Right.
He goes, will this seller be regulated to pay taxes on my commission that's paid with the proceeds from the 1031 exchange?
Well, the real estate, this is what's great. So much of this, so many times people think, wait a minute, we just did a 1031 and it didn't seem like there was any difference. That's one thing we commit ourselves to, is making it so seamless that you hardly notice a difference. And one of them is all the closing costs get paid the same. So the real estate agent and the title company gets paid the same, and then they just got to reinvest the rest and replace their debt. Does that go anywhere near answering your question? Did I read the question right? What is it about the commission?
Well, he was a little concerned that will the seller be required to pay taxes on?
Oh no,
on
no, it's a closing cost. So they didn't get that money. So they're, if they don't do a 1031, they're taxed on their net sales price. So that's gross minus closing costs. Right.
That was actually a great question, Nick. Mm-hmm. Keep them coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it enabled me to emphasize that so much of it, it's just, you're just selling and buying real estate. That's what other agents have said sometimes in my classes when they see people trying to make this hard. You're selling and buying real estate, and the closing costs get paid the same. So yeah.
So true. Nick said thank you, by the way. I know we're running over time. We're definitely going to have you again. I just can't thank you enough for sharing this. And I know everybody that is on this chat and leaving comments, they are just blown away by your knowledge. And also too, like you said, your bedside manner, the fact that you come from the farm and ranch world, and taxes can be very, very, very intimidating for ranchers and farmers. You know, their expertise is to work the land, not always financials. So I'm so excited to have you on our team. And by the way, everybody, Greg is an EXP agent as well. So we're very excited to have you as a part of our EXP family. Just once again, showing that we have a great network of agents and broker associates here. And thank you so much. I hope all of y'all got the information. Don't forget anything and additional slides, some of the pamphlets he had spoken about. They are in the description. The links are there. Also, Greg's information. Thank you so much, Greg. I couldn't have asked for a more educational and worthwhile podcast today.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. You're very welcome, and thank you.
Awesome. Y'all have a great Friday.